Hi, I'm Eric Lubau, and welcome to Beyond the Belt. This is a conversation with Brady McLean, a black belt out of Sheridan, Wyoming, USA. Brady is a motorcycle philosopher with a focus on mental health. He's also a CrossFit coach, brand representative for Go Fast Don't Die, and writer of the On Any Someday email newsletter. I hope you enjoy our chat. Hey, Brady, thanks for being on.
Thanks for having me, Eric.
Tell me, what was it like for you to get your black belt?
What was it like for me to get my black belt? Man, I'm actually looking at it right now. I did not intend for that. This belt actually is that this belt actually was incredibly special. So my grandparents gave me that belt right there after I was awarded my black belt, and my grandpa died the next year, the year after. And it's very cool. This part is actually way cooler. I did not intend for this segue, but it's very cool to be like, um, this is the last belt I'll ever have, right? Like, I'm never gonna have that thing's not gonna change colors. Um, and for my grandparents to give me that, and for me to, when I'm thinking about like when I'm my grandparents' age, I will be wearing that exact belt right there. Um, that was special. That is very special. That just hit
What
me in
made
a
it
way that I just,
special for you? Like, I get that your grandparents are your grandparents, but like, was there something particular about your grandparents specifically awarding or gifting you that belt?
yeah, I mean, I think the thing is, it's like so my grandpa died the year after, and so they will, like they will be gone. When I am, I don't know what it looks like, what that belt will do, if I'll give that belt to someone else or if I'll just wear it until my dying days. But throughout that process, my grandparents will be with me. And like they also got to they got to stick around and see this achievement from something that was very unlikely for their grandkid to do. At least I feel like probably for most of their life, looking at me like they weren't like, this guy's going to be a martial arts badass. That just wasn't in the cards for me in the early years. So I think it's very special for them to have seen my progress and got to honor that progress, got to honor sort of I mean, what feels like the beginning of the progress, right? What feels like the beginning of the journey. I think when I'm sure this is just a repeating theme all the time on here. You said everybody on this podcast is black belts. It feels like the beginning. I imagine
You'd
that's
be surprised. Like, it is a repeating theme for sure, but there's certainly people who look at it as like, uh, okay, I'm here and now I feel good. And it's not necessarily like, oh, now's a starting point. For some people, it is. For some people, it's the reason that they quit. It's
yeah,
like, hey, I made it and I've
achieved.
achieved
Yep.
this and I've moved on. Yeah. So it's
Yeah.
it's not always just that theme. Were your grandparents also martial artists in some form, or were they just like proud grandparents?
No, they were just proud grandparents, and they would have been proud of me for whatever I did. But I grew up playing music. I was chubby, like I was, I wasn't in shape. I didn't get in shape till I was an adult, and realized how I was in awful shape. Um, yeah, my actually getting my black belt. I'll just touch on that real quick.
Yeah.
I honestly did not intend to have my black belt be sitting there. I threw all this stuff together, and then that launched me into a whole emotional, awesome little reflection. So thank you.
That's okay. I want this to be whatever it feels like for you. And if an emotional reflection feels appropriate,
Yeah,
yeah, just
yeah.
jump right in.
No, it's cool. It's very true. It's very real, and I super appreciate it. It's awesome. When I actually got my black belt, so I wanted they wanted to award me my black belt about 7 or 8 months before I actually got it. And myself and Jeremy Williams, who got his black belt with me, he's kind of my main training partner and just my brother. They wanted to give us a black belt, and the reason they wanted to give us the black belt is because we were beating the other black belts. And I'm sure that a lot of people, especially if they're jujitsu people, they'll understand this. Like, having a belt doesn't mean you beat everybody who is a belt underneath you. And beating people with a certain belt doesn't mean that you deserve their rank either. And so, black belt for us, it was interesting. For me, it was like, I was just like, I'm not ready. I'm not ready. And they're like, what are you talking about? You're beating black belts. And I was like, man, that's such a, that feels like such a shallow, it feels like such a shallow definition of what a black belt is, or like a brown belt who's beating black belts should be a black belt. I was like, I disagree, and I had a lot of work to do, and of course there was plenty of work to do on the technical side of my jiu-jitsu. But for me, like a black belt was has always been. So I grew up in Wyoming, which is the least populated state in the country. And when I started doing jiu-jitsu, a black belt was not a thing that even existed. The first seminar that I traveled to was a Dean Lister seminar in Denver, and I was like, "That's a black belt." Like it was like and it was the boogeyman. It's
I
like
just did one of those in Berlin. I went to one of his seminars last year. It was
yeah, you
Dean
learn how to
Lister.
break everybody's legs.
Yeah.
That was that too. Like that, that was back in the day when like touching people's legs was still offensive,
Yeah.
and so it was a wild one. But anyway, a black belt was like just a non-existent thing, right? For me to even ever get a belt, because there was no jiu-jitsu program. We had a fight gym, we had an MMA gym, and I started doing MMA, and then I started doing judo at another school, and I really enjoyed judo, and then I just really enjoyed grappling for like the Rubik's cube of it, and the longevity of it. Like fighting was cool, and I still enjoy fighting. I still enjoy mixed martial arts. But it's not something you're like, oh, I'm just chilling today and I'm going to go in and fight somebody. You know what I mean? Like that's
Yeah.
just not
It's a
quite.
it's a different vibe. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, so when I was thinking about getting my black belt, I was like, oh my gosh, it was like this all just happened so fast. Like I'm just not ready for it. Honestly, like I was like, I have some people I need to apologize to for things in the past. Like I have amends to make. I have bad habits I have to kick before I become a black belt, right? Because a black belt to me was like not only someone who like could tie you up, like fold your clothes with you in them kind of thing. It was because I could do that. It was also somebody you would go to and be like like the Mr. Miyagi, right? Like you would go to and be like so what's wrong with things? And it's like you need to just sit and be quiet for 30 minutes. That's your training today. Like no, I need to learn how to do a better Kimura. Like no, just sit and be quiet and don't do anything for 30 minutes. Kind of like the black belt was that to me. And I was like, well, I'm not that. I'm not there. So when I actually got my black belt and they put the belt on me in the whole ceremony, it was very cool because I was doing it with Jeremy. That part I really enjoyed. The other part was just like very uncomfortable, man. It was like, it was it was not the fanfare like hooray, like I did it, like and to be honest, like most of the mountaintop moments in my life I've noticed are not that thing. There's joy in the journey and there's peace in the process, or the goal is joy in the journey, the goal is peace in the process. But what you realize, like when you get to the top of every mountain, every goal I've ever achieved that was a large goal, when you get there you're sort of like, huh, all right, well, keep
That it?
keep going then. You're like, like
Yeah.
there's a moment, and it's almost supposed to have this reverence. It's supposed to have this weight. And for me, it just kind of didn't. It was like, man, we're at the same place we always are. Like now my belt's black, and like I'm a little annoyed because it's like not even worn out. It's like fresh, and now I got to go wear the thing out. But it was interesting, man, because like when you get to the top of the mountain, you can see the mountain real clearly.
Did
You
the
can
reverence
see.
of that moment change for you, like in hindsight, or did the reverence come, for example, like when your grandparents gave you that black belt? Or do you just not have any reverence for that moment for yourself?
Think I think like the reverence for that moment is becoming, because in that moment it was another moment in my life where I realized where like your goal is not actually the goal. You don't set this thing up here so that you can achieve it. You set this thing up here so that you have something to look at while you're walking. And as soon as like you get there, it just we think like we're so used to this like work and then paycheck, and the paycheck's the good part. right? And I just think that's the wrong work if that's really what you're doing. Like if it really is that like I hate the work and I love the paycheck, and I hate the work and I love the paycheck. Like the paycheck's every 2 weeks, and it's just not worth it's not worth your time. I have this tattoo that says "invest your time," and it's one of my favorite because it's just like, um, like if you're working for the paycheck, dude, you're spending so much. It's just the paycheck's not worth it. I don't even care how much it is, and I don't think. See, so
I think some people, that's interesting because I actually agree with you. Like my fundamental philosophy is quite similar to yours. But I've also learned over the years of managing, large teams, hundreds of people, like you need a breadth of people. And some people really just show up for the paycheck because everything to them is outside of that paycheck. Everything to their family is their life, their hobbies are their life, and whatever it is. Uh, and I had to get quite comfortable with that. I mean, now I'm comfortable with it, but I had to get comfortable with that early on, realizing like we have different drives, we have different
yeah,
motivators.
yeah, and very true. I mean, I'm a romantic. Like the story. I mean, this is what I do for a living. Is I tell stories like in reality, and if I'm not interested in the story, like if the story doesn't fire me up, I can't get interested in the work. Now I'm very good at making the worst type of work have a great story, right? So I can still do work that I sort of hate to do. I even like I really dislike endurance sports. Like it's just my least favorite thing to do, ultra marathons and all of that. And but I love to suffer. And I like to out suffer people, which is a very weird thing to like, it's
You
like,
like playing deep half?
yeah,
Yeah, okay, yeah. People who like to suffer like deep half. It's
yeah,
just I've noticed that over the years.
yeah. My coach was a big, deep half guy. So anyway, I digress. Man, I got so much to share, but, yeah, so I signed up I was at the bike shop a couple years ago, and I like doing CrossFit. I like lifting. Like I'm very active. But I don't like, sitting and like doing a 100-mile bike ride. Well, there's a 100-mile gravel bike race, that was happening, and it's kind of a big deal here. They call it the Dead Swede, and it's got a lot of traction and popularity. But I go in there, and I'm like, oh, this is cool. It's coming up again. I was like, I said, like, how do you think I do? Or do you think I could do it? And they're like, oh, you should sign up for the 40 miler. And I was
Challenge
like,
accepted. 100 it is.
the 40, like, why not the 100? And like, oh, you're just not that kind of athlete. Like, they meant that in like like you're an explosive, like you're a jujitsu, you're a fight guy. Like, you're not a bike 100 miles uphill in the mountains kind of guy. I didn't have a bike. Like, I didn't even, and I was just like, yep, okay. I'm I'm obviously doing it now. I have to go find myself a bike, but I signed up on the spot, and then went and had to go find a gravel bike and bought a bike. And I was in LA for like 3 weeks at the beginning of that, so I was having to like go start my miles in like downtown Los Angeles, which is a terrible place to ride a bike, especially like long distance when you're trying to just like kind of go in a straight line or get some hills, or there is no gravel. There's just homeless people and lots of traffic, and anyway, it was awful. But I did that, and I actually did. So I did a jiu-jitsu tournament the day before the race. So I won the jiu-jitsu tournament and then did the gravel bike race. And so I was like, well, that's the new challenge. And I hated every minute of that whole thing, but I loved how much I hated it, right? And
Yeah.
that was like,
And
anyway.
you got a great story out of it, right? You just got to tell a pretty dope story.
And that's all that's all I'm in it for, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the heart. I think that's what we're looking for. We want a great story with our lives.
Is that why you got into CrossFit, is to do some of the suffering, or did you get into CrossFit for more noble reasons?
Um so I so my jujitsu path kind of looked like this. I was here in Sheridan, and I was doing MMA fighting. Well, at first I got in shape. So it all started with like I used to be, I'm 180 pounds now. I used to be 220, didn't have near the amount of muscle that I have now. I was just chubby, dude. I worked in college. I worked at a coffee shop, and I spent my days perfecting something called the rock and roll latte. And it was probably like a 1,500 calorie drink, and I would drink several of them every day, trying to make it just right. For a while, I
What's
was
in
like
it?
trying to, huh?
What's in it? What's the rock and roll latte?
I can't tell you what's exactly in it, but maybe one day I'll make you one. So
Oh,
I kept it. I've kept it a secret all of this time,
okay.
and
Well, yeah, I don't want you to spill the beans here.
it was actually it was pretty funny. It was like my secret. Like I didn't want anybody to know. So like other people who worked there, people would go I'm like, "Can I get the rock and roll latte?" No, we don't know how to make it. You have to come see Brady. And I was like, "Sick." That's what I like that. But it was delicious. It was like vanilla, caramel, a little white chocolate. Like if you can start to imagine. But I just perfected this thing. And well, through that perfection, I probably drank 4,000 calories a day for a very extended period of time. Not to mention being in college and the stress and the freshman 15 kind of thing. Anyway, my cousin came home from boot camp and he said, I can run 3 miles in 24 minutes. And I was like, this is my little cousin. I could do that, obviously. I just need to go do it to prove it to myself. And so I got a one punch pass to the YMCA. I went up to the treadmill, did some quick math. That's a 7 minute mile 3 times. I just have to hit the dial and stay on the treadmill and I'm done. I win by several minutes. And so I did that, dude. And I got about not even a quarter mile in, and I was doing like the and like trying to turn it down as fast as I could. I was about to die, and then I just like got a headache, man, like just terrible. So I went from that to like I got on the treadmill every single day. I had no idea what fitness was or how to get fit, but I knew if I got on the treadmill every day, eventually I could run 3 miles in 21 minutes, and that just kind of became a goal for me. And then once I achieved that goal, I was like, I had lost a bunch of weight because I just, got on the treadmill and I lost a bunch of weight. And it was the same thing, right? I was like, okay, well now I want more. Like, but I'm like, I'm skinny. Like I've lost some weight and I can run for an extended period of time at relative speed. But I can't lift any weight. I don't even know how to lift weight. So I started getting in shape and doing all that. Well, through that process, a buddy of mine who is a MMA fighter, he was a 7-0 amateur. He was a local, champ here. He grew up wrestling and was doing judo and was doing MMA. And I was like, hey, how about you teach me how to fight? I'll teach and I'll train you. And so I'm like teaching him everything I know, and he's teaching me everything he knows. He was like 215 pounds, 6'4". So for a long time, my only training partner, I'm 5'9", and at this time was 160. So he just like ragdolled me all of the time. But anyway, so I went from doing MMA with him and fought a little bit to my coach, Glenn Hall. He came from fight sports under Pablo Popovich. So him and Wagner got their black belts together, and so he showed up in
That's
town.
a tough training partner to have in the room.
Oh yeah, dude. Well, at the time I was like kind of one of the best jujitsu guys around, right? But there were no jujitsu guys around, so I was just kind of like I was like this big fish in this very very small pond. Well, this dude showed up, and some people back in the day like they'd show up like I'm a purple belt under Hoist Gracie, and like no, you're not. You just read a book or something, and you watched a YouTube channel or whatever. And pretty soon that's the cool thing about jiu-jitsu, like you can't fake it. So they would get exposed and be like, you're not that thing because I'm a white belt and I just killed you. So anyway, when Glenn showed up and he said he was a black belt under Pablo Popovich, and I was like, okay, dude, sure. And I'm an Olympic sprinter under Usain Bolt, cool. And then we rolled, and I was like, I have no idea what you just did, but I believe you that you're a black belt. I don't know if you're a black belt, but you're at least a lot better at whatever you just did to me than I have no idea what you just did. I couldn't do a thing with him, and he wasn't trying. And so I was like, forget MMA. I'm done with that. Like, I'm all in on jiu-jitsu because I have a world-class black belt here, um, and I can train with him every single day. And he needed a training partner too. So it was one of those deals where like a lot of times black belts kind of drip you technique. They drip you stuff. He was like, I need a guy. So he was giving me everything he could give me. He's showing me all the little things. He's teaching me one-on-one every single night for 3 hours. Um, so we did that for a long time, and I was competing, and I, went to World Series of Grapplers Quest, and I was doing Fight to Wins, and I was doing every tournament I could get, to. Sometimes going like alone on my motorcycle, and then he moved, and it was like, dang, like, and then he moved, and then everybody else kind of quit. All the other training partners kind of just like frazzled out. Nobody was really committed to it, and I just was kind of brokenhearted. I ended up like training with the blue guy, like the blue dummy, putting a gi on him and like trying to, he does not tap. Nothing works on that guy, but I was just like training with this
are just
blue.
super skilled,
I know, it's incredible.
Very flexible.
Dang it. He has a white belt and I cannot get him to even budge. I can't even get him to wince. So anyway, I was basically, long story long, I was looking for a new challenge. I was training by myself, and I was kind of like, man, either I move to pursue jiu-jitsu or, or I got to find, or this has got to be the top as far as like my competitive career kind of thing. And so I went over to CrossFit, and it was funny. The first day I went, I won the WOD. I won the workout of the day.
Yeah.
And they were pissed. I didn't mean to, it would just happen to be like a cardio workout where it was like body weight stuff. And of course I got crushed immediately after, and everyone was like making sure I got crushed because I won. I started out by winning, and you're supposed to start out in some humility. But anyway, that's how I started doing CrossFit. And then the challenge showed up, and I was like, okay, within a year I had my level 1 certificate and owned a gym in Reno and was coaching.
So, I mean, that's actually one of the things I'm curious about, right? Like coaching CrossFit and people who are CrossFit athletes, there's got to be like a pretty big difference in the way you sort of treat people, address knowledge. Like, when you compare it to like teaching jujitsu, right? Or coaching jujitsu, like what do you see as like the differences there?
In coaching CrossFit and coaching jiu-jitsu?
Yeah. Like how do you address new people? How do you address experienced people? Like from your perspective, like how do you do it?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think with CrossFit, like CrossFit at some point you're just like, you kind of say like scale appropriately, like find your weights, but I don't know. Actually, maybe there's more similarities than there are differences. Like, because it's one of those things where like both of them sort of self-correct, right? Like you can go in here and like, hey, you know what? Like, let's figure out a way to make this safe. So in jiu-jitsu, I'd be like, hey, roll with Jeremy. He's a black belt. You can't hurt him, and he'll make sure you don't hurt yourself. Like he won't hurt you because, he'll handle you like a child, which is what a black belt gets to do to a new guy. It's a special thing. And in CrossFit, you're like, okay, we're on a machine. Like, we're not going to give you too much weight. Like, go as hard as you want. Go as hard as you feel like going, right? And they'll go out super hot and absolutely die. And you're like, okay, how did that go? And they're like, I absolutely died. I started fast. I was going faster than him at the beginning, and then I died. And you go, okay, so that's not the best way. Let me teach you energy systems. Like, this is how your body works as far as energy. And you kind of correct from there. But I like the learn the hard way. Sometimes people are like, oh, not yet. Oh, not yet. Not yet. No, you want to ride bulls? Jump on the bull real quick. Jump on the bull, and then we can get started, right? Like,
it's hard to forget a lesson you've learned the hard way.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So what role does jiu-jitsu play in your life these days? Like, do you still train regularly? Are you coaching? What is it for you?
Yeah, both. I just got neck surgery. I don't know. I can't remember if I told you that or if
you did. Yeah, I think we've had similar surgery. I had herniated my C4, C5, C5, C6, and I've got a nice little titanium plate sitting on there for the rest of my life.
Very nice. Yeah, wasn't quite that I had a posterior foraminotomy, so they just had to go in there with a Sawzall and clean out a bunch of bone spurs, and I had a bulged disc at C7 that was pushing on the C8 nerve root. So the C8 nerve root passes through a foraminal hole, and in that foramen was a bunch of bone spurs, so osteophytes, and between the bone spurs and the bulge disc and the nerve, there was no place for the nerve to go, so it was just fully pinched off. And I've been dealing with that for about a year. I've still been rolling, still been training, still been kind of doing everything. But then when we went to this, we went on our Juarez trip, it just went from like a 5-6 pain to like 9-10, just so bad. When we went to Juarez, like, this is some of the most just spiritually excruciating times of my life. It was awful. It was so bad. It was like 9 or 10 out. I couldn't sit down. I couldn't lay down. So I couldn't sleep. I just would walk around all night for 5 days while we were down there. And I tried to teach some jujitsu. I tried to coach some, and I did, but just like my brain wasn't, I just wasn't there. It was awful. Anyway, yeah. So now, I still am probably about 3-4 weeks out from being good enough to start rolling again and training light. But generally, like, the way it works for me is I usually train every night when I can, which is not every night, which probably ends up being like 3 to 5 days a week.
Still a lot.
Sometimes 6 days a week, and sometimes two. It all just depends. But our group now. So I was telling you about the time where it was just me and no one else was training. Well, Jeremy was around. He was an MMA fighter back when I did MMA, and he was like, he was around, but he wasn't really that into jiu-jitsu. Just wasn't doing a whole lot, and he was working a lot. And then, kind of about a year after I started CrossFit, and kind of like, I was like, okay, there's a community over here. There's a path to being challenged every day, and I'm just competitive by nature, so I'm like trying to get good over there now. And he's like, hey man, I really want to learn jiu-jitsu and do jiu-jitsu. And so we started doing jiu-jitsu classes, and he was like, how do I get you in here every night, dude? I want you in here every night. And I was like, okay. I was like, well, when you start beating me, I'll start coming in every night. Like, when it starts getting interesting in here, then I'll start coming in. And he took that to heart. He was like, okay. And he started watching every YouTube. He started getting every tutorial, and he's got a journal, where he's like taking notes on everything. And he's drilling at home with his wife. His wife and now is a blue belt. But that poor lady, Amy, she's awesome. But she would drill with him every night, and so like she was like learning jujitsu by osmosis, and so. And he just started getting better and better and better and better. And, pretty soon, he had caught up, and we were having competitive matches. And I'm like, okay, well, I told you, if you got good. And then through that, more people are coming into the gym, and we're getting different people, and we're getting like, really, really intelligent. So back when it was a fight club, it was kind of like the idiots who would sign up for a fight were the ones who were coming to,
Yeah.
coming to train. And in jiu-jitsu, and especially like in the past, I don't know, 5-10 years, jiu-jitsu is just like, everyone talks about jiu-jitsu. Everyone knows what jiu-jitsu is. Before it was like, oh, cool, like karate, or is that tai chi, or is that, what is that? And now, people are UFC
Mexican
fans.
ground karate.
Yeah. So yeah, exactly. So, um, so anyway, yeah. Now our group over there at Grindhouse Sheridan, at our gym, is incredible. Just like an awesome bunch of people, guys and gals. Like, you go in there, and it's like, I travel all the time. I go to all the gyms. I go to Austin. I go to LA. I've trained in Florida. I've trained overseas. Like, I've been to Denver. Like, I've been to every gym that, I know the levels. And our level here in Wyoming is, I'm like, I can't believe we have, you go in there, and like, you used to have like, okay, well, I'll fight Jeremy and then I'll have the rest of the night off, basically. Like, everyone else will be easy. Now it's like, you go in there like, oh gosh, like, just war
That's
after war.
wonderful. I love
Yeah,
I love that gyms really get to grow like that, and they grow around people who are passionate and driven, um, and then gyms end up having their own styles. And I think that's one of the wonderful. I probably trained at a little over 200 different gyms over the course of my
oh
life,
my
and
gosh.
I will tell you, every gym has its own style, its own feel, its own set of moves that they stick to. And once you figure it out, you're like, okay, I'm going to be mostly safe in this gym for until I get the person who doesn't train here normally.
Right, right. Yeah, yeah, it's awesome. And
Do you travel for work? Is that mostly what you're traveling for?
yeah, yeah.
Is that the motorcycle business? Is that the like which business are you doing most of your traveling for these days?
Yeah, so Go Fast Don't Die is our it's a lifestyle brand that we kind of started. I just started riding a bike and was overcoming a bunch of personal stuff, and through that process, like I start getting passionate about something, and I just started telling talking on the internet about the stories and the experiences that I was having through that process of just traveling on a motorcycle and meeting people and having these experiences. And my business partners, we had like Go Fast Don't Die was kind of like a little thing. It was like our own little like, saying and stuff. But then it became a brand, and we just started pouring in like all of the lessons, all the lessons that I would learn on that path would kind of like summarize themselves in a small saying, safety second, or, you know, um,
As somebody who
fast as,
spent a good chunk of my life skydiving, hearing safety second is like, it like makes
yeah.
me cringe a little bit. But I also used to ride motorcycles for 5+ years, so
Well, you
I
wouldn't,
know the
if safety was first, you wouldn't skydive, right?
that exactly. Yes, I hate to admit it, but yeah, it's that's
If
probably
safety
true.
was first, you would just stay home in a bubble wearing a helmet and be like, safety. Safety is the
You know
only
what
goal.
though? Skydiving is super safe. Like even I mean, my first jump was 25 years ago, 26 years ago, but um, it was a little less safe back then. But even now, even 10 years in, it got so much safer as the technology got better,
Yeah.
the equipment got better, the safety practices got better, and you could even when I started, you could do so safely.
Yeah.
Just like with motorcycle riding. Like look at all the new materials, look at all the, just all
Right.
the safety mechanics that weren't there
And
15, 20 years ago.
I think when you zoom out, it depends on how you're looking. When you're looking um, myopically at safety versus looking at the big picture of safety, to me, like, oh, I'm wearing the hat.
Yep.
Perfect. That's perfect.
That's why I was laughing when you said it, because I was like, I don't even think he realizes he's wearing the hat that says safety
Dude,
second.
I didn't realize it was so funny when I got my neck surgery. I was wearing this hat and I had the big thing on, and I was like going in to get my prescriptions and stuff. And I'm like, and they're like the combo of a safety second hat and this big neck strap was hilarious. But yeah, like I think for me, and kind of with the way Go Fast started, I had gotten to a place where I was like, okay, well, it felt like the end of my life. Felt like my life was over, and I kind of like summed it up. I was like, okay, well, if this is and I was just in a very emotional white belt, right, in life. And when you're an emotional white belt in life and you lose your big tournament, you're like, well, that's over, nothing. That's the end of my story. And I remember thinking like, well, if this is the end of my story, what did I do? What was the story? And I remember feeling so unsafe in that. I was like, just not proud of what I had done. I was like, I haven't done enough. I didn't do this. I never did this. I always chickened out on this. Like, I was always getting ready to live and never actually living. And so I was like, okay, I'm not going to kill myself, but I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm not going to fear death anymore. And as soon as I started living like that with safety second, not as the priority, but and not that it's not a priority, it's second. That's still quite a ways up
Still
there.
a priority, yeah.
Yeah, that's still podiums,
Yeah.
But and when I started living like that, the story started getting better. And I think for me, the most dangerous thing that someone can do is reach that moment where it's the end of your life and you're not proud of the story you're telling. That's not safe at all. So to me, living in a way where you're going skydiving and you're taking chances on living your life's best story is the only safe option. When you actually zoom out, like that's the safest option is for you to go and do all the things. I think it's a Helen Keller quote, but she said safety is mostly a superstition. The fearful are caught as often as the bold in the long run. And it's just like, it's true. We all die, so like whether you die jumping out of a plane or you die holding on to your helmet on the
Yep.
couch at home, you still meet the same end. The only difference is the that dash in the middle kind of thing.
I think a safety is a risk mitigation strategy. Like, I've always thought about it as a risk mitigation strategy because there's only so much you can do, right? At some point, like your luck runs out and you don't know when that's going to be. Like I've always thought about it as I got into skydiving because I was afraid of heights and I stuck with it because I wanted to conquer that fear. And I'm still
Yeah.
afraid of heights, after nearly 1,000 skydives, nearly 900 skydives. But like, I, I stuck with it because I was like, I could die doing this. I could die on my motorcycle on the way to the drop zone, or I could die eating, like a sandwich in between jumps,
Yeah. Yeah.
or I can just not wake up the next day. And if I haven't at some point spent a good chunk of my time doing things I love to do, fine, but I don't want it to be because I was stupid. So let me try to take whatever, I'm going to wear the right gear when I get on the bike. I'm going to practice my safety procedures when I'm, skydiving. I'm not going to piss off the giant black belt when I'm a white belt and, like start throwing fists and like it's a risk mitigation strategy for me.
But you're not going to not skydive.
Right.
Right. And that's the whole thing. So we have one of our shirts that says risk happy, and that's the thing that I think people don't do. Like, that's the thing that I think people forget about the actual risk. They're like, oh, too risky, too risky, too risky, until you get to the point where you didn't risk anything and you go, that's the biggest risk of all. Like that to me was just such a heavy time for me when I was kind of adding up I was like, okay, well, what did I do with my life? And I didn't like the story. I'm like, that's the most terrifying thing in the world to me. And you're gonna have some level of like regret. You're gonna have some level of like, oh, I could have done this, could have done that, but at least give it a shot, dude. Have the courage to just go out there and try and fail, and that's all that being a black belt is. It's just a white belt who started doing it and failed and failed and failed and just kept going until one day they wrapped a different color around them and like, you are now a black belt, and you're like, dude, I have so much failure left to do. I have
You've
so
made
much
enough
failure.
mistakes. Congratulations.
Yeah.
Here you go.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. And, you hear that constantly from like, dude, I'm just a white belt that didn't quit. I just kept going. I just kept showing up here. And that's what's cool about the right type of environment in anything. When you surround yourself with the right people, when you put yourself in the right environment, like, you have no choice but to get better. It's just going to happen. Like, if you go to CrossFit every day and you don't bring your ego, obviously, like, you don't like to go in there and break your back, you're going to, even if you go in there and give 50%, you're going to get in shape on accident. You just show up, and you're going to be around a culture and community who values physical fitness, and also values community. And so, like, in the same way, like, when you go to jiu-jitsu every day, like, you're going to be surrounded by people who are competitive, who are intelligent, who are, like, they are, um, uh, they're audacious in what they want to achieve. They are consistent. They're persistent. They're all of these things that, like, you just will start becoming on accident because you're surrounding yourself with those people. And it's the same way, when I was growing up, like, I surrounded myself with not the worst kind of people, but definitely not great people to grow with. I always thought, like, well, I'm not going to become like them just because I'm around them doesn't mean I'm going to become like them. And, I was wrong. I was wrong.
Yeah.
Like,
Another
whoever
lesson
you're,
learned the hard way.
exactly. And you go, just because you're disciplined and, you can resist doesn't mean that you should go put yourself in the most, in a position where you have to resist all the things. Go put yourself in the position to thrive where you can dig into everything that's around you and it's going to be great. Like, you stock the shelf with the cabinets with trash, you're going to eat it. And even if you resist eating it, you're going to eat it a lot more often than if it wasn't there. And you should be eating, so, like, stock it with great stuff and you'll eat great stuff.
When you got into the business side of things, like, what was the risks that you started taking? Like, how did you apply the risk taking to the business side of things?
Well, I've had a lot of help with risk taking with my business partners. They have way bigger balls than I do. I think they're crazy most of the time. But I think the risk for me is like for me, like relationships are really, really important to me. And so entering it into a formal business um, engagement with anyone is like you really have to mind that relationship. Because you see the world differently. You read the same sentence, but you didn't read the same sentence, right? Like, and you really have to learn how to communicate. You have to do all of those things, and in the same way as jujitsu. Like you have to learn, like you're the guy you're rolling with, like you want to roll hard and he wants to roll technical, like you're going to piss each other off, and you're not going to, but when you have this communication, and even like, at some level, you don't have to say like, hey, how hard do you want to roll? You just kind of start moving and you figure each other out and you find this like symbiotic thing. So I think, the in jujitsu, what you learn not to panic. You learn to go like, okay, my knee is inside of my ear, and I'm like, this hurts quite a bit. There's a lot of tension here, and I'm choking. But I probably got about 11 seconds before I pass out. So I need to kind of deconstruct what happened here and then deconstruct what happened here. And you have this like calm under pressure that you've just spent so much time exacting and so much time getting good at, instead of being like, oh no, and when you go, oh no, and you freak out, and we root in fear versus rooting in curiosity, we destroy everything. Fear is the mind killer. Fear is
Yeah.
the great lie that wants us dead, that wants us failing, that wants us flailing. And so when you learn to not root in fear, which jujitsu teaches you, and then that goes into like, okay, we had this thing happen. Let's not panic. Let's adjust. How can I be a supportive role here? Like, you know what I mean? And you
Well,
learn
you
to.
built an agency, which is not an easy thing to do. And you did it by pulling together what I think if I read, you had like 20, 25 people at the sort of upper end of the personnel side of things. Like, people don't just know how to do that. Like, you had to take risks on hiring people. You probably made some mistakes. Like, what were the risks that you just put yourself out there and you're like, I'm going for it in order to get yourself there?
Yeah, I think hiring people uh, hiring is a funny one for me. When we made like our first real hire, it was funny because my grandpa, not the one that gave me the belt, the other grandpa, another grandpa, but he always wanted me. He had a path for me, right? He's like, here's what you need to do. You need to do really well in school. You need to get into the University of Wyoming here, and you need to get your engineering degree. For just from his standpoint, that's how you become successful around here, right? That's how you become the guy who's not just, stacking rocks and driving a truck kind of thing. Um, and I didn't want to do that. I wanted to dance, like I was an artist. I wanted to play punk rock and I wanted to do it my way and have pink hair and all the things. And so our first hire, we had we had someone who applied with us who had just graduated the University of Wyoming. And I didn't hire him because he was the best guy for the job. I didn't hire him because I wasn't scared of hiring him. I hired him so that I could go tell my grandpa that I just hired somebody from the university that I didn't go to, right?
Vindicating
Uh,
you.
yeah, just so stupid, so stupid. But I that's where I was at the time, and then we made that hire, and it was it was terrible. It was so bad. He had just come out of college, so like in college, you're given these scenarios that you work through, and you go, okay, here's the scenario. Client has $100,000 budget, and you got 3 months they need a logo and this and that and these deliverables and etc. And so they got 3 months to work. They have all the resources in the world, all of that. And the reality is, so then they come out and they would go, okay, client needs a logo, the budget's nothing, and it needs to be done next week. And it was like, these are unacceptable conditions for me to work with. And I'm like, too bad, too bad, dude. This is what's going on. And the whole thing was a learning process, and it kind of went just almost as bad as it could go. Which is great, right? Because when it goes as bad as it can go, and then you go, oh, we're still alive, we're still here. That was tough, but we've just
Nowhere
now
to go
gone
but up.
through all. Well, yeah, we've now gone through all the wrong things. So next time I have some questions I'm going to ask before we hire somebody. Next time I have some scenarios I'm going to run through, and I actually know what they are. And then the next time we hired, it was much better. And then the next time we hired, it was much better. And then the next time, and then pretty soon, it doesn't feel, the biggest risk is not finding the right people, not asking the right questions. It's not doing nothing. And again, like I attribute, I give a lot of credit to my partners, because they're the ones who always wanted to grow. Like I've always been kind of like, no, let's go slow, grow slow. They're the ones with the cojones. So, and it's funny because I'm the, dude standing up on motorcycles, and everyone thinks I'm the risky one. Not when it comes to money, like not when it comes to that at all. Like I still have the pennies I saved when I was in fifth grade. I was a Green Bay Packers fan, and they played the Denver Broncos in the Super Bowl, and I was talking so much trash, which I love to do. Not as much anymore. I still love to do it, but I just can't bring myself to as much. I've just been humbled by the world so many times. But I love. No, it's not. No, it's not a bad thing. I got my talking out. I got plenty. Yeah, I did plenty. At that time, I was to anybody who would bet me any amount of money, I was like, let's go. And we're in Wyoming, so we don't have a football team. So the closest place is Denver. So everybody's Broncos fans. I'm like, all right. So I was just like this heel, I got to play the counterculture guy and be against the main team. And I bet my whole life savings plus a lot. So I made $5 a month working for my dad. He had a tire disposal business on the side. He worked for the state, but he had a tire disposal business. And I'd go sling tires, a few days a week, and he'd pay me $5 a month. Well, I bet about 40 some dollars on the Super Bowl that year, and they lost. John Elway did his little flip into the end zone and broke my heart, dude. I mean, I had to break my piggy bank. I took all the money that was in there. It was about $28 or something like that. Not enough. And so, like, not only did I have to show up and like pay the people, I had to be like, hey, I'm not going to be able to get you the $5 I owe you for another couple months. Like, I have to pay Joey, and I have to, like, literally, I was like, I've lost my life savings.
This doesn't sound traumatic or forming in any way possible.
Oh, dude. It was terrible. It was terrible. And then I spent the next 3 months working my ass off, being like, I'm not even going to get to, not only is this money already spoken for, but I have to take it because I lost, and I talked so much trash. It was like humble pie, and just, oh my gosh. So anyway, I'm much more, and I didn't come up with much money at all either. My dad he worked, like I said, he worked for the state, and he had an extra job doing tires. It was very blue collar. There were 4 of us, and then 5 kids. Anyway. There
so
wasn't
you're jumping into opening now a physical location for yourself like that. How is that for you? Like you guys are opening like the physical location for the motorcycle brand, right? For the Go Fast, Don't Die, right?
Yeah, we did.
How was that for you?
Oh my gosh, it was
from a digital sort of e-com brand to a physical location is a huge step.
Oh yeah, and it was, we didn't go slow either. We didn't ease into that one. We rented a space. There's about a 4,000 square foot shop. It's right next to me now. Now it's a gym. It's not our shop anymore. But we rented that in 2020, and it was just massive. And the funny thing is, like, the brand was getting big, nationally and even globally. Like, the brand was growing, but we're still in Wyoming. Like, most people who dig the brand, or even like, who even fit in with the brand, don't even exist here. They're not here. Yeah. So we end up getting this garage.
I've been to Sheridan 3 times.
No way.
4 times. Yeah. over the years, and it's always been awesome. Like I have such great memories from each time I dropped into Sheridan. But
Yeah.
like the Cowboy Cafe, like it was always the place I went for breakfast. Like I really enjoyed Sheridan, but it is not near anything.
No, no. So it was funny because we had this big space and we spent a bunch of money cleaning it up and renovating it, and we built this office space and we built this retail space, and we got motorcycle lifts and just so much work, so much money, so much investment. To heat the place was $1,000 a month. It was just gnarly, and it was like nobody would. It's not like people were stopping by shopping. Like that's just not happening. We live in an 18,000 person community where most people are old people, and then the other people are cowboys and ranchers, and just wasn't. Anyway, it was hilarious. It was cool because we like had a place people could go, but it was not cool because we kind of had a bunch of just delinquents in there, like building motorcycles and doing burnouts and just living rowdy, which was awesome. Like that's what we did. But it wasn't that awesome because we were paying for it. And yeah, anyway, it was,
What's your big lesson from that? Like, what's your takeaway if you want somebody to not make that mistake that you made?
I just think that like, what it is so much more important than what it looks like. And when you're trying to like make it look like what you think it is, um, instead of just what it is, you go away from the essence. You go away from the thing that makes the thing special. In this world that we live in, where like everyone's sort of blowing up their spot, like everyone's blowing up what they're doing and trying to appear larger, appear richer, appear more shredded, appear this way. We're putting more energy into like the appearance of something than the truth of something. And what happens there is like it's just a scarcity model. When something is scarce, it goes up in value. And truth, and just like alignment, integrity, those things are getting more and more scarce. So if you can just be you, and like no matter what situation you go into, no matter who's looking, you're the same you, there's so much value in that. And when you try to look like more or be more or whatever, um, not only do you set yourself up in an insecure place, like on no foundation, but you rob yourself of the time you could spend actually being in alignment with where you are right now, which is where you learn, where you actually happen. Like that. That's what's special about jujitsu is you can't pretend. You can't walk. You can walk in there. You could buy a black belt on the internet and put it on. Uh, you don't walk in and people are like, "Oh, you're a black belt," because life will test you. Everything will
Very
will test
quickly,
you.
in fact.
Yeah, and in jujitsu, yeah, you're screwed. You're in big trouble because someone's gonna beat you up and then ask you about it. Then they're gonna say, "What are you doing, man?" So
But
then you're
I want
double.
you to like explain what you just said, because it's you talked about the essence of what something is, but what did that mean for you in terms of the space and like how you treated it versus what it was? Like what was that? Because I feel like you alluded to it, and I'm just curious what you meant more specifically.
Go fast to me is like this thing in the sky. It's like this great mentor. It's the thing that I have. It's this sort of philosophy that I appeal to, and I go, what would the brand do in this situation, right? And the brand's mission is to contribute to the culture and community that inspired its existence. And the goal is to encourage people to live their life's best story. That's the whole thing. And so in so doing this shop over here, we weren't actually living our life's best story. We were sort of like we need a physical location, so we have a place for this actual thing to happen. And the idea was like we'd bring people out, and we did. We had Devil Stone Run here, and we'd have these events, and we'd bring everybody in. And so, like for like one day out of 365, or a few days out of the year, I'd be like, yeah, see, this is the thing we're doing. This is Manifesto Incarnate. This is the real thing happening. And that's what we were about, was the real thing happening for people. But the other days, it was not the real thing happening. It was a lot of suffering. It was a lot of like expense. It was a lot of like taking my energy off of serving that community and having to figure out how to make this garage work, how to make all these things, how to deal with all these people and make them happy. And ultimately, like you don't, like you become a people pleaser, you get pulled off, and I got pulled off in doing that. Like I was pulled off of the mission that I was already on, which is to serve the broader community and work on the messaging. Because for us, the medium was the message. It wasn't having a bike shop. It wasn't building motorcycles. Like that's just not wasn't our special thing. It wasn't our essence. It wasn't the thing that made us special. There's plenty of bike builders out there who are amazing, way better than anything we could ever do, even, at our best. And I really like the stuff we do. I like the bikes. I'm building one right over here in the apartment.
Nice.
Yeah, and it's super sick. I love it. But they're much better people, right? Like my core
It looks like it has
competency.
that those like Ducati sort of front struts, the gold and silver kind of
Yep,
style.
yep. It's a Triumph Scrambler 1200 XE, and
Triumph is my second guess.
there's a company out of Germany that builds a kit for it that we're working with on this. So
Nice.
yeah, it's cool. Shout out to Crooked if anybody's into motorcycles and small German brands. But
I could add it in the show notes.
yeah, sick. But yeah, anyway, I just, and that was a lesson I had to learn. It's like I always say, this is really corny, but there's lessons and blessings, and if it's a lesson, then it's a blessing, right?
Yeah, okay.
All
That
all of
works.
all
That,
of
that works with an accent. Yeah, for sure.
right, all of life is lessons and blessings, and if it's a lesson, then it's a blessing.
So what does serving the community mean to you though? Like you said, it didn't feel like you were serving the community. Like what is serving the community for you and in the brand, in the mind of the brand?
Yeah, so like I said, the medium is the message, So for us, like we have a Sunday email that goes out. It's funny. Yeah, I would have never imagined when we started this thing, and I was, standing on my bike going across this suspension bridge in Mexico, and like, just like looking down. I just like all the things that we were doing when we started. I would have never imagined if you would have told me that like the most special thing that you do is send an email to 100,000 people on a Sunday. I would have been like, that's the dumbest thing I ever heard. No, I'm not interested in sending emails to anybody. But now we do this thing it's called On Any Someday. And it's an email series that we send. We've sent every Sunday for a few years now. And so we send it out with like basically just some food for thought, kind of a challenging thought. We send a custom wallpaper, so some artwork that people can save to their phones, kind of stuff that kind of summarizes or is a reminder of what we wrote about. And I just write about kind of whatever's on my heart and whatever lesson I'm learning, and challenge people to ask themselves these questions. So it's like we're challenging our community and helping grow our community by challenging their thought process. A lot of times we get into these just our environments become repetitive. We create patterns and we don't really question them because nobody really questions them, right? We don't really shine the light on places, and in dark spots is where mold grows. And so we try to just shine light. Hey, did you look over there? What's going on over there? What's going on over here? And then not only that, like, hey, what's going on over there? Well, here's a story about, about this. And yeah, and I think that's what it is, right? And so like when we make the only products we sell are apparel stuff, and we don't really believe that people need more shirts. We don't believe people need more apparel, but we do believe in the message that we have on the shirts. And if those can serve as not only a reminder to live your life's best story in some way, but also as a representation of something that you committed to, um, that's really cool. And what we've also found is like people who wear our stuff, because we're small enough brand, that when you see someone else wearing the same, it's not like Nike, you're like, oh, you're wearing a Nike shirt, we must be the same, right?
Yeah.
Like when people see Go Fast in an airport, we get these stories all the time. They're like, hey, Go Fast don't die. I'm like, yeah, this, that, and let me show you and then they start chatting, and then they end up going on a vacation together. It's like, that's
Does that
cool, man.
happen?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Like way more than you would think. Yes, 100%. Like we do a ride called Devilstone Run here, and the everybody shows up. It sells out every year. And but everybody shows up now, and it's like like we had to like add some tickets and try to get like people that kind of not come again. Like to get some new people in, because it was just like the same people were coming. We only have a certain amount of people we can do on this like cross country road trip. And so yeah, and like you go there and they're like, oh yeah, we all got together for the 4th of July, and they all met at this ride, like, yeah, people connect all the time, and that's it, right? Like C.S. Lewis has this quote where he said friendship is like, it starts when someone says like, oh, you too? I thought I was the only one, right?
Yeah.
And so when people kind of come around, it's like we're sort of like the Philosophy mental health motorcycle brand. And so like when people see this, they're like, oh, you're into living your life's best story. Tell me about that. And then that's not the beginning of a shallow conversation.
Hopefully
That's
not.
that's the beginning of a conversation of depth, which is why I love doing podcasts, because we just sit down. You and I have never chatted other than like messaging back and forth. We don't know each other, but I know a lot about you based on who you are. Obviously, there's a black belt, connection, but there's also like we're doing a podcast, and so we sit down and we don't go like, so what's the weather like, like
Yeah.
we just jump into it, like, well, what would it feel like when you got your black belt? Like, okay, let's do that, and I
Yeah.
love those kind of conversations. So for us, if we can be a catalyst to those conversations, as well as provide some food for thought that serves those conversations going into more depth, that's our main thing. That's who we are, and that's the lane we should be playing in.
So what do you feel like when you press send on that email every Sunday? I mean, if you're going for depth and you kind of throw your heart into that email, when you press send, is that nervous? Are you excited? Are you feeling vulnerable? Has that changed over the years?
Um, so are you familiar with Rick Rubin?
I mean, I know who he is.
So a friend of mine is works with him. She's like a body worker. She like does massage and all the freaky deaky hippie sound bath stuff. She's awesome. She's killer. But she kind of turned me on to his thought process, and I read his book, and it's very in line with a lot of the ways that I like to create. For me, when I hit send, it's kind of like it's done. Like my part is done, and now it's like completely up to whoever you guys to do whatever thing. Is that your little grip thing?
No, I was laughing because you were holding it and I was holding it too. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, so when I did this, well, like I don't know if you had any like nerve issues or grip stuff, but like I have the grip of a toddler right now.
That's exactly why I got this, because when
Yeah,
I had my spinal surgery, I had radiculopathy in which is a hilarious name. I had
I
all nerve damage and atrophy in my right hand, and I got this grip thing because I had no strength in my right hand.
dude, we are matchies.
Yeah. So that's why I have this, and I still ADHD play with it while I'm talking so I can stay focused on what I'm doing.
Dude, I have them all over the place. Like I just have them like set out, kind of like I ask for these for Christmas, like any grip stuff. So I have a whole bunch of grip things all over the
I
place.
literally do too. I could reach. I got the ball here, and I got the
That's amazing,
the finger grippy thing. Yeah, I've got
dude.
all
Yeah,
of
I think
this.
we must have got the same kit. That's
Yep.
great. Yeah, yeah,
So you were
super
saying
cool.
when
Yeah,
you press send it, you're done.
yeah, yeah. It's like yeah, it's for me, like sometimes I think something's going to be a massive success, and then when I attach myself to the success of it, and then that success, then that response has power over what I think of the thing, right? So like when I do that and I put it out there, and people don't really grab a hold of it, well, that might not that might that has nothing to do with what it actually is. The response is not does not have like an inherent um attachment to the value of the thing. So like the work we do, like the thing we do, just because someone doesn't like it. And as a matter of fact, like if people don't like it, you might be onto something, especially if they really don't like it, right?
Yeah.
Um, so for me, I'm just like, okay, what I do is like I spend the time reflecting on what I need right now and what I'm thinking about, what's on my heart and mind. And when
So
I
what's
do
your
that, and
process
I
for
get
that? Like
what's that?
what's your process for that? Do you like start writing it on Sunday morning, or are you like noodling it on it all week, or how do you get that
I mean, I
Sunday
noodle on
email
this
set
stuff
up?
constantly. Like I'm
Yeah.
obsessed, dude. I'm always like, what am I doing here? Like, like I just live in that space of like everything's a story and everything matters and nothing matters. And, what should I be doing and what should I not be doing? And I should be doing everything, but I should also be doing nothing. Like I'm just always in pursuit of those things. So usually, like literally, I sit down to write it like an hour before it goes out. And I just sit down, I go, okay, and I have like, I take notes and like I got tons of stuff, but I'm like, what do I need to hear right now? What do I need to noodle on? Like, what do I need to go? And I start thinking about a concept and I go, okay, this concept, what is this? Well, how do you apply this to life? How is this applying to my life right now? What questions do I need to be asking? So the goal of the email would be like, they would get it and they would have something to think about to kind of guide them spiritually that week, emotionally that week. Like, they have something to kind of be like, okay, this is what I'm working on for the week. There's homework, and it's crazy how many people do it, how many people like need it, like how many people look forward. There are plenty of like CEOs who get our email on Sunday and they bring it to their people. It's crazy. One day I missed it. I didn't get it out. And we had so many emails like, hey, I've got nothing for my meeting on Monday. I'm like, dang, people should be paying for this. But people like they'll bring it to their meeting and go, okay, here's this thing here's the message, here's the questions, and here's some artwork. And it's just so dope, man. It's so cool.
Have you ever felt like you got one wrong? Like you sent it out and you were like, oof, that did not, like maybe not the same day, but the next day you reread it and you're like, I think I might have missed on that one.
I think, I mean, yes and no. So for one thing, like I have no idea. I don't get to control people's um translation of what I've said, and so like if it hit for them, it hit for them. Certainly I go, is this true? Like certainly I go like, did I do the best thing? There's a few times like where I quoted people who I hadn't done research on, and people love to be like, this guy was a Nazi, or like like people love doing that kind of stuff. I'm like, okay, well, read what it says. Do you agree or disagree? Like like there's been times where I'll look at it and go, nothing's sort of, most things are not true in all contexts and in every, right. So it's like there's that, but no, I don't think there's ever been like that's a complete miss. I think like as much as I'll put it together an hour before I send it, but I've been putting it together for years and years and years.
Do you have a
All of
favorite one?
these. Yeah, depending on the time and the day. I mean,
What's the one that sticks out for you? What's the one that you're like, yeah, man, I wrote that and I'm really happy I did.
so right now, so we do like in January, we kind of do like an on any someday series where we actually drop like we drop the artwork on a shirt, hoodie, kind of like a little collection. Um, and so the ones that we just dropped hard choices, easy life, easy choices, hard life design. And last week was nothing changes if nothing changes. And these are all just themes from emails. Let me see if I can just pull one up for you. Are you familiar with the misogi? The concept of misogi?
Yes.
So we did one. So these are all sort of like New Year's kind of stuff. Like, how do we?
Can you just explain it for people who are not familiar with misogi?
Yeah. So misogi is
Japanese
kind of a Japanese concept of like doing basically doing something incredibly hard, like a life-changing, difficult thing for your year. So you might pick like it's sort of like a year-defining thing. Maybe I can actually let me see if I can just pull up the Sunday series for So here's one. This is an old one.
It's all right. I was just looking for one that was meaningful for you.
Yeah, well, they're all meaningful. So this one, so this is what it looks like. It says, "I feel outstanding."
Nice.
You, right? Like that's your quote. And it says, "Winning." It says, "Winning is important. Racing is importanter." And that's an old pop quote. That's my dad. And it says, "There's a 100-mile foot race called the Last Man Standing. The rules are simple. Every competitor has 1 hour to finish a 4.2-mile loop. At the beginning of the next hour, Everyone lines up and at the starting line and goes again. So if you complete the lap in 50 minutes, you get a 10-minute break before the next lap. It continues until one runner remains. One year, serial entrepreneur Jesse Itzler made his Musogi to run this race. Throughout his training, he kept getting stuck at 38 miles, no matter what. He couldn't break that wall. Determined, he found a podcast featuring former Navy SEAL named Chad Wright, who claimed he once helped a novice runner, someone who'd never run over 5 miles, complete a 100-mile race by having him continuously repeat the mantra, "I will not quit." Intrigued and somewhat skeptical, Jesse contacted Chad for help, and Chad agreed. He arrived a week later and skipped the small talk. Tomorrow we're going to start map out the strategy to double your training runs. We'll wake up at 4:45 and end at 5, and then at 5 a.m. we're going to start running. Throughout the first day, friends of Jesse were checking in. Did you change your stride? Are you eating differently? Did he give you a treatment plan? No, he hasn't said a word to me, Jesse replied. The next morning, Chad finally revealed a new strategy. He said, "I know you'll face challenges. I know there'll be moments when you'll think of quitting, but we don't speak of it. When I ask you how you're feeling during the run, you'll say you feel outstanding." And he said, "That's it?" He said, "That's it." Next morning, Jesse shattered his 38-mile barrier and ran 50 miles. When facing life's obstacles, are you speaking life or death into yourself? What would you say if it was life or death? If death comes in small doses, maybe it is. So, how do you feel? And that's the
I
whole
feel
thing.
outstanding. Yeah. All right.
Feel-
Fair
I
enough.
feel that. Right. And so, like, it's that, right? It's these little things you're like, dude, okay. And so the hope would be that, like, I get goosebumps about this stuff. I get so pumped up. But, the hope would be that our community, the people who are paying attention to the brand, would go, "I feel outstanding." And for all week long, they'd go, "I feel outstanding. I feel outstanding." Even when they're on mile 45 and all they want to do is quit. And they're on their, or whatever, they're approaching 38. This is where I always break. Nope. I feel outstanding. I'm brand new. And so we try to give them something like that every week.
And this has this turned into something for you where you're getting the inspiration from other people? Like people are bringing you stories and they're like, "Hey man, this changed my life," or "This did this for me." And you're like, "Fuck yeah, this is awesome."
Sometimes, sometimes I kind of like if it hits for me, right? So people will share stuff with me all the time. Specifically, my business partner Josh, he's like, "Hey, this would be an awesome Sunday email." I've probably used like one or two of the things that he sent me, and he's probably sent me like 100, you know. And people will send me stuff all the time. I love that people are sending me stuff. For me, it's like what hits for me, and usually like it's like whatever is the thing on my mind. So usually what people are sharing, a lot of times that's what's happening for them. If it just doesn't have that thing for me, then I won't send it. Because again, like I just think like if people would look at that instead of being like, "What does the world need? World, what do you need?" The reality is like the world, a lot of people are pretending. So like if you ask someone how they're doing, like I don't know, just we don't it's not as honest, but if you can know exactly what you need. You know exactly what you need to hear. You know exactly, you know what you need. And you're living in the
I think
same
it
world
depends
that
on the day. I more often than not wish I knew what I needed, and I wish I could articulate it better. But
yeah.
I get where you're heading with that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, there you go. So that's it, right? You wish you could articulate it better. So you're like, I wish I had a tool. I wish I had a process so that I could articulate how I'm feeling or understand better what I need on a day to day. So you go, okay, that's what I'm going to write about today. That's what I'm going to bring to the world. Like because the troubles that we have, like we're not so unique. We like to think we're special, and we are absolutely. But a lot of us are going through all the same stuff. Universally, like we're dealing with, and it's getting more and more where our experiences are very similar because we have the internet and we're all watching the same like machine that's trying to move us. Like you said, you moved to Germany, so like you're removed from like a lot of the culture that we're around. But most of the people who are reading these are going through the same things. They're going through the same kind of stuff. By virtue of them following the email, they probably like what we have to say. So like we're just going to keep saying what we have to say based on how we're feeling. And then it becomes this never, I never don't have anything to say, you know, or if I do, then I have something to say about it. Like I can say like,
It's
"Hey, I have nothing."
interesting. Like your version of it is much more deeply authentic than someone who's trying to be authentic by pulling in other people. Like if you had for example, if you were starting to use more of Josh's stuff, it wouldn't feel authentic, not because it's not authentic for Josh, but because it's not your authenticity. And I think
Yeah.
that's a really interesting thing that you've locked onto and said, nope, I will not deviate from this.
Yeah. And we all have that, right? Like we all have our own unique point of view. And too often we spend so much time trying to be the guy, trying to sound like the guy that we think everybody else wants to hear. And the reality is, like I said, truth and integrity are getting more and more scarce. They're getting more and more rare, and they're becoming more and more valuable. So, like your reality, you sharing what is true for you, and your thought, even if you're corrected and you go, "I was wrong," but that's what I was thinking. I'm not wrong on that. That's what I was thinking at the time or how I was feeling at the time. But you don't learn these things unless you present them and you're willing to take the chance. Like you don't learn that you can't fight unless you show up at the fight gym and go, I'd like to try it out because I think I can. Most people think they can. It's you know this. It's
Yeah.
crazy. People walk in, they're like, I bench press 405 pounds. Good luck holding me down. And you're like, okay,
Good luck
watch
getting
this.
up.
Yeah, and they're like, "What the heck? This girl?" And they're like, "Yeah, you roll with Kinsley for a little bit." And they're like, "I'm a man," and like, "Okay, she's gonna strangle you," and then we'll chat again. But like two things happen: either they return to their ignorance, right, and they go, "I'm never going there again." They try to make excuses for all the things, or they become humble and they become like, wow, that was incredible. I would like to learn. But what they just found was truth. They just found an honest mirror. And I think jujitsu, like that's what jujitsu is. It's a very honest mirror for you to practice looking at yourself and to witness yourself changing yourself. The inputs that you're putting in are making a brand new you every single time. And that's it. It's just little, little tiny, go train for an hour. You'll be different. I think that's what you learn, when you get your black belt is you go, for me, I wanted to just go back to the little things. Even like that's the difference between a black belt and a blue belt or a purple belt. When I was in purple belt, like I pretty much knew every technique that I know now. I knew how to do all of the moves for the most part that I know now. I maybe, there's a couple things here and there, but I knew how to do them. But the difference was like, on my Kimura, I didn't throttle forward. I just held here, but I didn't do this. And when you do this, that is the difference between a white belt Kimura and a black belt Kimura. Like when you come here instead of being out here, like it's just these inches. And so like when you get to your black belt, you're like, I want to go back, and all I want is a couple inches. All I want is just like this much. And when you realize that, like, you think life is big, and I think when you get to the top of the mountain, you look and you go, oh, all it was these inches. All it was these little subtle little details that I thought didn't really matter. That was just like, these guys going on and on about like these tiny little things. Like, I get it. Move on to the next thing. I just want volume, volume, volume. And you get to a place where you're like, no, the thing that you bring to this thing, the thing that you bring when you're like, your body type and your thought process and your thing, when you learn to trust yourself and you go back in, yeah, you just learn, man, like it is not about having, you don't fear the man with 10,000 kicks. You fear the man with one kick that he's done 10,000 times. And
It's a great
what,
Bruce Lee quote.
yeah, yeah. You figure out what that means. You hear all these quotes and you hear all this awesome stuff as you're coming up, like, oh, cool. But then when you get to the point in life where you're like, oh, I know what he meant. I just figured out what that means. I've heard it a million times. I've said it 100 times, but I just now learned what it is.
One of my favorite ones of that is there's a quote from the movie The Matrix where Neo and the Oracle's bodyguard were fighting, and he said, uh, I needed to know who you were. And he's like, why didn't you just ask? And he goes, you don't know someone until you fought them. And I thought that was like, I thought there was like something to that. And the more time I've spent in jujitsu, the more I've traveled, the more I roll with people, the more I've been in bad positions and learned about myself and put other people in bad positions and learned who they were. Um, the more I was like, wow, you can really tell a lot about somebody when you fight them and you put them in a bad position. Or it's the equivalent of, in many ways, like see how a person treats their server, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And if you're a black belt and you're rolling with a white belt and you're just destroying them, it's like, well, that says a lot about you, right? But if
Yeah.
you're like,
Yep.
you're letting them work and you're giving them and you're still working on stuff yourself, and you're helping them, and you check in, and like all of these things say a lot about who you are. And you learn that from fighting somebody when you have the opportunity to do good or do less good.
Yeah. There's a song, Fall Out Boy song says, "My songs know what you did in the dark." You know that song?
Yeah.
And and I feel like jujitsu is very similar. Like, and I actually, when I teach, I use this analogy. I'll share in a second, but it's like my jujitsu knows what you did in the dark. So like when we start fighting, like I'm gonna know everything you skipped. I'm gonna know every time you weren't paying attention. I'm gonna know every time you were paying attention. I'm gonna know if you drilled at home. I'm gonna know all this stuff because it all shows here. So I can just meet you, slap tap, and in 3 minutes I know what type of person you are. I know what kind of integrity you hold. I know like what your patterns are and what you're like. I pretty much know a lot about how you operate in the world, and it's true that like how you do anything is how you do everything. So when I see that, like, oh no, this guy's dedicated, he's technical, he's paying attention to all the right things, he doesn't quit when it's hard, like he figures it out when it's hard. It's like I could trust this guy. If I was a cop, I'd want this dude to be my partner. Like I can trust this guy with my life. If I could trust this guy to watch my dog, like I can, like you just know. And in 3 minutes, you didn't say a word, but jujitsu is such an intimate conversation,
Yeah.
that like where like all the secrets are revealed. I always, so what I tell people is I say, um, maybe second to sex, jujitsu is the most intimate thing you can do with another person, and most of the time, because of the way that we've made what we've made sex into, it's jujitsu is way more intimate because most people are like, shut the lights off, be in the dark. I'm scared about sex and me being bad at it, so I just kind of get done as fast as I can and then turn the lights back on and don't talk about it, right? So it's like in that way, if that's the way that people do sex, then jujitsu is much more intimate than that.
Yeah.
Like fighting a person is one of the absolute most intimate things you can do with them because
Because you're vulnerable.
because
You're
everyone's
vulnerable.
exposed. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, man. I normally at this point in the conversation would have transitioned to say, what advice do you wish everybody knew? But man, I feel like you've got a lot of that. So is there anything that like bubbles to the top of like, if if everyone if you if everyone knew something, what would you want that thing to be?
I do have a lot. I do have a lot to share. I think that if I, something that I would leave people with is, your. So I have this invest your time tattoo, and what I've realized is like time is kind of either your greatest enemy or your best friend, and it all because it's going to just amplify whatever you offer it, right? So like whatever you bring as an offering, it's going to pay you. It's going to 10x it. So if you bring in a debit, right, and you spend your time poorly, it's more than just losing that piece of time. And you learn this like if you started investing, or if you run a business, you learn that like it's more than just that amount of that 10 minutes or whatever that you lost. It's also the opportunity cost of how you could have spent that 10 minutes, right? So like there's a loss and then there's a loss on that loss. And the opposite is true is when you bring a great offering to time, it will take that thing and it will not only appreciate, but it'll compound. It begins compounding the value of that thing. So if you can take some time and literally just give it your absolute best instead of floating and getting through the thing, like if you can just take a very small amount of time, take 10 minutes on something, and you'll find this is true. It starts for me. I start obsessing because I'm like, I should be spending my time way better all of the time. Like I know better. But if you can take just 10 minutes and go, okay, for the next 10 minutes, I'm going to absolutely dedicate myself to becoming as good as I possibly to giving everything I can give to this one thing. And people who listen to this podcast, I imagine, are jujitsu people. So maybe bring it to jujitsu, and the next lesson you learn, the next thing you get taught, you go, I want to do this perfect. Not I get taught a technique and I go drill it and I did it 3 times on both sides, so I satisfied the minimum. Like, no, dude, I'm going to take this and I'm going to make it absolutely perfect. I'm going to ask all the questions. I'm going to do all the things. I'm going to do it the hard way. And what you'll find is like that 10 minutes might win 10 tournaments for you. And then you start learning the actual value of time in anything you do. And it's not just jiu-jitsu, it's everything. Good habits are great investments. Bad habits are poor spending habits.
Focus is really important. I think that was really beautifully articulated. Focus is incredibly important.
Yeah.
What are you excited for in the future? What are you looking forward to these days?
Funny enough, dude, I'm looking forward to doing so much less this year. So my normal MO is I'm traveling all over the place. I'm, doing motorcycle trips and overseas trips and all the things. I'm trying to resist that this year, which is difficult for me because, of course, when you say like, hey, I would like to spend the time at home, I would like to have a bunch more slow time. I'd like to have a bunch more quiet time, peaceful time. Everyone's like, hey, you want to go to Vietnam? And do this motorcycle thing. And you're like, yes, but I'm trying not to, trying to quit. I'm just excited I've woken up today was day 16. No, today was day 15. Day 15 of waking up and journaling every morning. I'm ahead in my journal. That's why I said day 16. I read ahead a little bit, but day 16 of just waking up early, having these slow mornings where I'm not, not jumping up and rushing out of bed and hauling ass to get to the gym kind of thing. I'm waking up early. I'm journaling. I'm reading. I'm just moving slow. I'm listening to Bon Iver in the mornings and just chilling, man. And it's been,
What's
and I'm trying.
journaling doing for you? Like, what has been your benefit of the last few weeks of doing it? And what are your goals with it?
Well, my goal is just to be consistent and slowing down and like being like every morning journaling is sort of like, it's like I'm waking up and I'm spending this time. I sit on the floor, and I sit right over here and I've got my little light and my book and my journal. And I just, I don't know if you see that, but they are right
Yep.
there.
Nice.
And it's just this short reflection time where I put something on the table. I'm not on my phone. I actually very intentionally have recorded every one of them. Recording, this is like a huge hack, by the way. If you're a phone addict, which most people are at this point, even if they don't realize it, just hit time lapse, or hit record and set your phone down. Like this is what I do when I clean the apartment. I'll set up a time lapse, and if in a time lapse, like if you stop, your time lapse looks stupid. But if you keep moving and you move things, it's going to look awesome, because it's going to go from what it is to what it becomes. And it all happens fast. So it's like this weird little hack where like one, my phone's not in my hand. Two, I'm motivated to get the work done, like do the things in a timely, efficient manner. Because if you can't tell already, I'm as ADHD as they come, the old ADHD, the potent stuff. And then
Happens to the best of us, I think, in jiu-jitsu.
Yes, 100%. And then at the end, you have this little treat. You have this little like, oh, look at this little time lapse of me making the bed. It's so satisfying because the bed goes from being not made to made in 5 seconds. And it's and it's cool. And in that 5 second time lapse, you had 4 minutes where you were getting stuff done, and then it's done, and then you have something to share. And that was another goal of mine this year, is to create more than I consume. So anyway, journaling just starts the day off of like what's important today. I think well begun is halfway done, and when you can start and say like, okay, this is what matters. This is the reflection, and this is sort of the speed of the day. Like this is how I'm going to operate instead of flying out of bed, brushing your teeth as fast as you can, and driving to work and being late and wearing the wrong underwear you should have thrown out 14 times ago. That stuff just messes with you, and that's the little things that I'm talking about. Like when you go back and get the little things right in jiu-jitsu and in life. Like when you focus on those little things, everything else starts falling into place. We're in such a hurry. That whole slow is smooth and smooth is fast thing is just so true. It's so real.
Yeah.
And so yeah,
Yeah.
so
Agreed.
that's what journaling does. I sit down, I have a little premise. I have this book that I was given that just has like it's like just a daily kind of challenge, daily thought. And then I just write, and it's just a, a little thing, just a little, every day in here I have the day, and I just have like a little, just like whatever the thought is, and then I write just one thing that I'm grateful for today.
Yeah.
Uh,
Very
and
cool.
yeah, man. And then like, now I'm just, I'm pumped because I have this thing that I can go back and look at, and also have this thing that like, the goal of, I think anytime you do like any, like, I love just resets. So New Year's resolution, I used to think they're so stupid because everyone did them and no one kept them. Um, but I think any resolution, any resolve you have to do better in any way, anytime is great. And New Year's just happens to kind of set yourself like, you can kind of do it because especially in retail, like if you work the way I work, like people kind of chill out after
Yep.
this between Christmas and is like no
You
man's
get a
land. Like,
break and then it starts again, but very slowly, and you ease
yeah,
into it
yeah.
with retail. Yeah, for sure.
So I went to Montana and got this little cabin by myself and just went in there and wrote everything on this whiteboard. Like, I mean, just everything, just like a strip myself down, look at it, spend some time. There was no service there. So I'm totally by myself. It was kind of miserable for a little while and then awesome, but yeah. And then I just committed to doing this, and it's been great. And and I look forward to it. When I go to sleep, I'm like, oh, I'm stoked to wake up early and just like sit down and just journal, just like read these thoughts. I wonder that's why I'm a day ahead, right? Because I'm like, whoa, what's the next, like, and the goal is not to, I could read that whole book in a day, I could just read through there's small 1-page prompts kind of thing. So I could just keep going. So that's not the point. Our problem is not. There's a quote that said, if information was the problem, we would all be millionaires with 6-pack abs. There's plenty of information out there. Like, what we need is less. Like, or what I need is less. What I need is to look at one thing, and just that one thing. Okay, this is the thing for today, and I'm going to write about it. Then I'm going to say I'm grateful for something, and that's how I'm going to start my day, instead of this panic or this ambition or
It's
whatever.
so fascinating to me how many times throughout the course of this conversation you've used different ways of phrasing focus and
Yeah.
how you're prioritizing focus. It's just really interesting to hear because it's something that I'm trying to do as well, but just to be focused on fewer things, do better, focus on yourself a little bit more, and really just build yourself up and use the tools at your disposal, like journaling, like reflection. Yeah. Cool, man. As I'd say, is there anything you want to promote? But it sounds like you've got a business and a newsletter, and I'll get all of those links for you and from you and put them in the show notes. But is there anything that you want to shout out to anyone who's listening?
I mean, I would love it. If people want to read the Sunday emails, I think that is edifying and good for people. I don't really have anything to promote other than thanks for having me on, dude. I think it's super cool. I love the premise of finding black belts and being like, yeah, but what else? Because the reality is, how you do anything is how you do everything. And people who become black belts are probably putting their hours in elsewhere, and that's very cool. I think there's these young, hungry, competitive, full-time black belts, and those guys are awesome. But a lot of times their view is very myopic. Like, they're just like, everything's jujitsu, right?
Yeah.
And it's going to be cool to hear from them in like 30 years, but like, I think a lot of sort of the casuals, if you want to call us that, like, I don't know how you get black belt being too casual, but like people who
I think
are
I
just,
became a black belt being casual for sure. I've never focused on it. I've always had a full-time job. Jiu-jitsu, martial arts in general has always been the add-on for me. I've always done it either before work or after work, and I've never had the opportunity to focus exclusively on martial arts.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I guess just there's like there's some obsession. There's some like thing that, like, after work, most people are like, I would say casual people who are casual are like, oh, I'm pretty tired, and I know that you have been like pretty tired and then went to train because that's what you do.
I'm in the morning. I don't really do well working out in the afternoons because I'm like, I'm tired. I'm probably not going to do it. When I was in my 20s, after work, straight to MMA, 2-3 hours a day,
Yeah.
5 days a week.
Yeah.
I'm in my 40s. I get up early, I go to jiu-jitsu where I teach, and then I go have my work day, and my evenings are mine.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, you're a black belt.
Now, yeah.
You're there. Yeah. You put in that's what I mean. Like, but I think anyway, it doesn't. Yeah. I think that perspective is super, super cool. I'm honored to be, in whatever group I'm in. I'm excited. I need to go listen to other people's podcasts, but I'm stoked to be amongst good people. And I think the premise is awesome. And I think there's lots to learn, and hopefully I've contributed. I appreciate you having me on, Eric.
Thanks, man. This was a wonderful conversation. I really appreciate your time.
Anytime, my friend.
Thank you for listening. If you have any questions about riding or building motorcycles or are interested in the Go Fast, Don't Die brand, feel free to reach out to Brady. If you find yourself near Sheridan, Wyoming, USA, please find Brady for a role. If you find his philosophies interesting, I'd encourage you to sign up for the On Any Someday newsletter. You can find his contact information, newsletter link, and website in the show notes. And as always, thank you for your time and attention.